And we really appreciate your promptness as well. So we know you have a very busy schedule. So thank you so much for being here. We'll get started, and we want to welcome you to the Berkeley Democratic Club board interview process. We appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And to give you a brief overview, we will interview you here and the board will vote on their recommendations. At the forum on September 19th, the board will announce their recommendation and it will show up with an asterisk on the voting ballot. This does not mean that you have the entire club endorsement, but just a board recommendation. The entire membership would still vote after the forum. We will keep the voting open through Sunday evening after the meeting. Members of the club will receive an emailed ballot. The forum and this interview will be recorded for those who are unable to attend. Heidi is going to be keeping time, and she will give you a wrap it up signal when there's about 10 seconds left, and will interrupt at 2 minutes.
Okay, hold on.
The questions will be about 2 minutes unless otherwise noted, and we're wondering if you have any questions before we begin.
Nope, I was just looking for Heidi. I've got her now.
Okay.
That'll be the timeout signal.
Exactly. All
Okay.
right. I was like, I don't
Okay.
see Heidi.
Great. So we're gonna pass it off to Nancy Yep.
Thank you.
Morning, Sophie. How are you
Good
today?
morning.
Good.
Very well, thank you.
Good. Good to see you. So please take 1 minute. This is a 1 minute discussion about why you want to run for mayor and just a brief introduction of yourself. But I'm sure people know you, but if you could do that.
No worries. Thank you. Well, I grew up in Berkeley and raised my own family just a few blocks from my childhood home. And I think most people know that literally from grade school to the city council, I've been very devoted to this community. And I want to say that I will never, ever quit on Berkeley or on my obligations to you. In Berkeley, I've been a leader for the schools, for the libraries. I've served on the boards of Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club, the Zoning Board, the Commission on the Status of Women. I'm running to continue Berkeley's legacy as a pace setter for equity and environmental action and transform Berkeley into a resilient 21st century city that supports strong community, thriving local commerce, robust civic engagement, active transit, health, equity, and joy. I read the mission statement of BDC last night. I reviewed it. Oh, I see Heidi, and I just wanted to finish that thought by saying that I literally agree with every single word of your platform.
Thank you. I've got question 2. This one is a little longer, 2 minute response, please. Please continue and tell us about your top issues and your priorities that you want to address as mayor.
All right. So I have 5 priorities: house people, care for people, revitalize our common home, help save the planet, and advance equity to fulfill the promise of Berkeley. And a little bit about each one of those. Housing people. I want to continue creating housing at all levels of affordability. I'm a huge champion for affordable housing, and I have some very ambitious ideas around that. I want to focus on creating new ownership opportunities, achieving our fair housing goals, and of course, continuing to end unsheltered homelessness, which is something I've done a lot of work on and very passionate about. Caring for people, that is ensuring the health and safety and the well-being of all Berkeleyans. That includes all the public safety issues from policing, making sure we have a strong, well-trained and well-overseen police force, saving Alta Bates Hospital or another full-service acute and emergency care hospital, earthquake and fire preparedness, but also a special focus on children and seniors. We have an aging population, people with disabilities, etc. Revitalizing our common home. We need to transform Berkeley into a safe and vibrant city that prioritizes community gathering, open space, local commerce, and active transit. We have a 19th century city that we have underinvested in for a long time. And I think we need to make major investments in transformative change for how we take care of the physical plant of the common home that we share together. Obviously, help save the planet. We need to continue our efforts to fight climate change and restore the environment, and equity and the promise of Berkeley, an equitable future where everyone thrives.
David, I think you're next.
Yeah, I have question 3. Good morning, Sophie. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Here's my question for you. And how many minutes does Sophie have for this? 2? Okay. What is your vision of improving and enhancing Berkeley's downtown?
Well, there's a lot of work to do there. If I could wave my own magic wand, I would keep it from being basically a superhighway that takes us past the downtown and make it into a vibrant, attractive destination. That means pedestrianizing it to the greatest extent possible, adding street life. I think the one silver lining of the pandemic is that we all learned that being out dining and shopping in the streets actually is incredibly pleasant. I would like our downtown to be so fabulous, so beautifully designed and attractive, landscapes, seating, places to walk, kiosks, street fairs, street musicians, really truly lively and vibrant, so much so that people all over Berkeley would say after dinner, hey, let's just go downtown and stroll. It's so lovely. So I really have a very transformative vision for the downtown. Our arts organizations are struggling. I think many of you know that I tried a sort of Hail Mary at the last minute when I understood that our arts organizations in the downtown, many of them are facing critical economic crises. I tried to pull together a measure so that we could support them. They're pulling out of the pandemic more slowly than some of the other businesses and organizations. We have to invest in the arts. If we don't do that, I think that we will no longer be the vibrant cultural community that I think is what attracted most of us to living here. So very big transformative change for a downtown.
Thank you.
Hi, Sophie. I have the next question, and this question is, currently absent council direction to the contrary, city staff are continuing to follow the Martin versus Boise standard of offering shelter in every instance before closing an encampment. According to city staff, they do not have the authority to enforce and close dangerous encampments, which constitute a public health hazard or even a fire hazard. Do you believe that continuing this approach is the right policy, especially given persistent and dangerous encampments?
Well, it's interesting. So first of all, I do not want persistent and dangerous encampments. And I think that the general idea of Martin versus Boise is a good idea, and it is the first thing that we should pursue. But I absolutely think that we need to have the authority to address more problematic encampments we need more tools to do that. And I think the line of cases that came down in sort of interpreting and I would say expanding Martin really tied our hands in ways that are not, they're just actually sort of absurd. So I'm pleased that we have a little more leeway now, but I want to be super clear. I actually met with the city attorney about this for an hour this week. We we have all the authority that was provided by the recent Supreme Court ruling. We are no longer constrained by Martin or by those cases. So we have all that authority now. There is nothing that stops our staff from exercising all of it. Obviously, the city of Berkeley is never going to move to an enforcement first model. I don't support that. And by the way, it doesn't work. We have reduced unsheltered homelessness by 45% using the policies that we have in place, which are working. But clearly, we have a few locations and encampments where those policies aren't working. And so I welcome the opportunity to have a stronger hand as a last resort when our humane housing first, services first approach hasn't yielded the results that we need, which is that we need people to accept housing and services and not continually impact specific locations. So I do support, I am glad that the city has more leeway to address very problematic encampments.
Thank you. So we have a follow-up question. In talking with city staff for the Harrison corridor in particular, all non-criminal alternatives to enforcement, including motel rooms at the Super 8 Motel, now the Campus Hotel, have been offered. For this encampment, do you believe the city of Berkeley should continue to acquire motels and add shelter beds before closing it?
I don't really view the two as related. I mean, I think we always need to continue having shelter beds and services and facilities that help people move from the streets into, up the ladder to permanent housing. But this one, this location in particular, and there are a few others, I don't even think of it as a homeless encampment. It's a protest encampment. The folks there have been, the regulars have been offered housing, shelter, services 1,000 times. We have done massive, excessive outreach to try, and literally they came to a recent agenda committee meeting, and they were, sort of complaining about the way they've been treated. And the head of Health and Human Services actually came down and offered one of them housing on the spot, somebody who we've offered housing like 13 times. And they rejected it. So this is not really a normal situation. They're looking to litigate. Sadly, I think some of them have been convinced that getting housed is somehow not in their best interests. I absolutely support moving this encampment, removing it, and finding ways to activate the space with, landscaping, street fairs, whatever it is that we can do to reclaim that space for use by the general public. It's been an absolutely horrible situation for a long time. It's horrible for the people in the encampment. It's disgusting and unsanitary, but it's been also absolutely intolerable and very damaging to the businesses and the people who live in the area. So I'm glad that we have additional tools, and I'm supportive of us using them.
Thank you so much.
Right. Hello, good morning. I have the next question, and it has a link that I can't read, so apologies if the link embedded in this question is an important part to read out, but I think it should be fine. So it says you have not supported the automated license plate readers, surveillance cameras, or supported residents to voluntarily give BPD access to their security camera footage. Can you explain why you didn't support these measures to ostensibly deter and prevent crime?
Well, I think there's a little mistake in there. I certainly have never opposed having private individuals share their camera footage not sure where that came from, but that's incorrect. So I support the responsible deployment of technology, including surveillance technology. My problem is that the city does not have, in my opinion, a responsible, balanced set of policies that strike the right balance between the utility of surveillance and the intrusion into civil liberties. Doing that is something I would like to do as mayor. I also know that the back end policies about how we store, use, who has access to all of that surveillance footage are not tight enough. So I support the use of technology, just like I support all reasonable, balanced uses of the police powers, but that has to be carefully balanced against civil liberties. And I don't think the city is anywhere near to achieving that. And to be a little more specific, we have no criteria for how we select a location where we deploy surveillance technology. We have no process for reviewing that location after a reasonable amount of time. We don't have any criteria for evaluating what we consider utility to be. So we could take 1 billion images and, I don't know, over a year, 1 or 2 were useful. Do we think that that's the proper balance? We have to have a rational way to decide how and where we're deploying this technology, for what reason, to evaluate after a reasonable amount of time, and also to harvest and remove that if we find that it does not meet our utility standards. So I absolutely support it. We don't have in place what I think we need to strike that civil liberties utility balance.
Thanks, Sophie. It's Richard. Good to see you. So I'm going to ask what I think is really a follow-up question to what you just said. So as mayor, would you make it a priority to work on addressing those issues that you talked about with this idea, with the goal of, resolving it and kind of figuring out where would we do it and how would we install cameras, etc., under what
Yes,
circumstances?
Absolutely. I mean, let's think about the United States Constitution is literally grounded in the attempt to balance these very issues. The new technology doesn't change the old issues. We all know that stopping and frisking 1 out of 10 people all day long would yield drugs, guns, whatever. Searching people's homes would yield, if we wanted to get to zero crime, we have a lot of means to do that without technology. But we don't do that. We as a society have decided that we need to also protect civil liberties. And we simply need to take those same concepts and apply them to these new technologies and not deploy them kind of willy-nilly. I mean, literally, I asked the chief of police when she wanted to deploy cameras, basically every single quote unquote major thoroughfare all over the place. And I said, well, what are the criteria? Why? Why did you choose these locations? Well, they're busy streets. That's not good enough for me. And I said, well, on that basis, would you, if you could, would you put one at every corner? And she said, yes. That's not balanced. So I am very confident because there is such deep thinking on these questions. It is embedded in the foundational documents of this country and in, centuries of case law and other laws and statutes. We need to go and take those concepts, we need to apply them and have a reasonable set of policies. If we put a camera up, if we have good criteria, we think it's going to be useful, we put it up and it doesn't yield anything, we can't leave it there forever. It's expensive too. I mean, it's even not responsible from a perspective of how we use our money. So absolutely look forward to doing the best policy in the United States that strikes the right balance.
Very, very quickly, just to elaborate on what Diego was talking about, on March 28th of 2017, there was an item authored to request that the city manager return to council with an update on the referral to create a voluntary database of security cameras in Berkeley, where you registered an abstention. So just to clarify, the
Okay,
next.
honestly, I don't remember the reason for that abstention, but you know, I actually think that private cameras are much better from a civil liberties perspective than government. That government surveillance and government intrusion is always been, and I think a lot of you know that my training is in law, right? So I look at this very much from kind of a legal lawyer, civil liberties perspective. But private, you know, I don't love that everybody, that we're all, I have a camera now because I receive threats and have been, you know, having people coming to my home in threatening ways. And it's a very sad reality as you step up in public office that you become a target of that. So, you know, I don't love that we are a camered up society, but it is way better when the data is coming to a private individual and it is only turned over at a time when something has occurred. And quite frankly, individuals can kind of be everywhere all the time. I don't think we would ever want government to put a camera up essentially in front of every single home and business in Berkeley, but private individuals can have cameras, and those cameras can provide utility to the police department in the case that there is a crime without government soaking up these huge amounts of surveillance. And, you know, I think, as you know, Lori, I don't believe that government is always benign. And, you know, we've been lucky mostly in the United States with an exception of 4 years. And those 4 years, you know, could happen again. But surveillance, and you see how it's being used in other countries. And I guess as someone who has sort of personal family history of government turning against and essentially hunting their family, including the local police, I don't believe that government will always be benign. And I think we always have to have those checks and balances to ensure that government is not too intrusive into our civil liberties. And I don't think we should be able to be traced everywhere all the time. It's just not something that I believe in.
Thank you. So Eric has the next question and then Remy. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for the added context, Lori. As you know, I wasn't born yet in 2017, so I didn't know that.
All right, thank you very much. So this question is about housing. Councilmember Hahn, I think there's broad agreement in Berkeley that housing is too expensive and too hard to find for all but the very wealthy. Over the course of your tenure on the City Council and the Zoning Adjustments Board, you have at times expressed skepticism toward new housing and its impact on overall housing affordability. Such skepticism has included seeking to exempt the Hills from providing equitable zoning, as well as having once described efficiency units as having insufficient space for people to be intimate. Has your position on housing evolved? If so, what is the policy you would champion as mayor that you think would represent a break with your past positions on new housing?
You know, I like you're pointing to a few very small exceptions, and you're missing the bigger picture of my record on housing. So I was on the zoning board for almost 7 years. I said yes to thousands of units of housing. I abstained on a few and said no on a few. And and out of thousands of units of housing, you know, I think that that's a reasonable record. I have appointed a strongly pro-housing zoning board member myself, Shoshana O'Keefe, and we have calculated that together we literally have said yes to more than 10,000 units of housing. So that's my record on housing. On zoning, I have voted in favor of every single upzoning that has come before the city council. So I want that record to be straight. Regarding the hills, the fire and earthquake hazards in those areas are real. They are not fake manufactured issues that are being put forward in order to thwart added density. We already know that about 500 people, that is what studies have shown, will not be able to escape from the high hills in case of a catastrophic fire, which is a likely outcome. So unfortunately, our housing goals and our public safety goals are in tension in the very high fire hazard severity area. I do have an idea about how to resolve them in a way that is equitable and that is unit neutral, and that is something that I plan to bring forward. To explain that, fire doesn't care if there are 2 units or 4 units or a single family home. Fire just burns a certain amount of material, whether it's trees and shrubbery or actually built buildings themselves. So I think we need to put a cap on the total amount of built structures that you can have on a parcel in the hills, and probably a cap on the number of bedrooms as sort of a proxy for how many people might be able to live on that parcel.
Sophie,
Probably 6 or 8
wrap on
parcels.
that?
Oh, Heidi, I'm sorry, you are not in my view.
That's
Somehow
okay. It's all right.
you
If you could
popped
just wrap
out.
on it.
Anyway, yeah, so I think that we can resolve those tensions in a way that does not favor single family housing, but also addresses the real fire safety needs. And that is something that I'm committed to doing.
Thank you.
Remy?
I think I'm next. Good morning, Sophie. Good to see you as always. My
Likewise.
question is,
Remy, if I'm,
oh, I'm on mute. I unmuted myself
hey,
though.
just because we're tight on time, if the response time for your question came in it.
It's about this year's budget, Sophie. What aspects of the budget are you most proud of? And which ones are you most disappointed by?
Well, look, we have done better than most communities in the wake of, during and in the wake of the pandemic. Places like Oakland and San Francisco had huge shortfalls in their budget and have really struggled with huge deficits. So I'm incredibly proud that we have been able to weather the pandemic and come out of the pandemic with balanced budgets without any cuts to services or reductions in workforce. And so I am incredibly proud of how we have responsibly navigated that and this huge economic impact that we've had because of the pandemic. Now, what was the other half of your question?
Which aspects were you most disappointed by?
Well, you know, I always hope that we have additional funds available for our innovative ideas, launching new ideas and programs. We are not just a city that kind of putt-putts along. We really pride ourselves on pushing the envelope on innovative policies and programs. That's how we reduced homelessness by 45%. And we didn't have the money this year to fund, the kinds of innovative things that in the past we've been able to fund.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Will you please offer us anything else you would like to add in your closing? And I'm sorry we've ran over time.
Well, I would be very honored to receive your endorsement. I think you all know that running a city like Berkeley requires experience and a steady hand, and I'm the only candidate who can provide that. I will never, ever walk away from my commitments to my elected office or to the city council. I think the resignations that we've had have been chaotic and disturbing for the community. Our city as an organization needs to be rebuilt. It's been under a lot of stress. And I really do believe that I am the only candidate who can provide the leadership, the steady hand that the city needs. I am endorsed by more council colleagues than any mayoral candidate in an open, non-reelection scenario in known history. I have the support of my colleagues who want to work with me to move our city forward. We are under a lot of pressure from a lot of directions, and I truly believe that I am the only candidate who is going to be able to work together collaboratively with all my colleagues, know how to run this complicated city. I'm also very aware that as a council member, you can be more of an advocate, but as mayor, your job is to make sure that all voices are heard and to find a path forward that takes into account the opinions of everyone that the community has sent forward to the city council. I really, really value what Mayor Adegin has built, which is he took a dysfunctional, very antagonistic council and has created a largely, overwhelmingly consensus-based council, and that is something that I plan to continue. I am also endorsed by a supermajority of the school board, many other elected officials in the city of Berkeley and the East Bay, statewide elected, and I'd be honored to get your support. And the firefighters and the building trades.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with you for many years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.